Yeah, thank you, Dana. And again, hi everyone. My name is Jackie. So my journey to where I'm at now might be slightly weird, but I went to college. I studied economics, and I also was at one point very close to finishing a CS minor. And then vividly remember I told myself that I did not want to finish the CS minor just because I went through the courses and I could have some programs that run, but at the end of the day, I really didn't know why am I learning all of this, and I did not really enjoy it. So fast forward, and then I graduated with an economics degree. I went on to economic consulting. Makes sense. And during work, I started to realize a lot of the work that we did can be automated. And that's why I started taking the initiative to automate the processes and the work that we have. One thing that led to another, I started to apply more and more of programming here and there and really enjoyed it. And I think that was one of the first moments that I've ever had to see the purpose of using computer science or
Simple.
programming.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and then yeah, so that was the moment for me, and then I just really went down this path to continue on, and then and but at work, a lot of things that we did was still very much bound within Excel. So I started to wonder what else is out there, and that's why I decided to enroll into a coding bootcamp in the city, where I learned about full stack web development, and I really liked it. I was like, wow, this is really fun. But at the very end of the presentation, like the last day of the boot camp, we had the capstone presentation. And also remembered that, wow, like it's such a great thing that we have built this with my teammates and all the hard work that we put together. But then I also had this feeling like, what did I just do? What did I just build? Like I use a lot of the black boxes, if you will, to put together a lot of things and eventually something that works. But somehow I felt something is still missing. And then like the more questions that I asked, like I just realized like I also didn't know anything. And then I continued this journey and went to the the bridge program at Columbia. So the bridge program, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it. The bridge program is designed for people that did not have a CS in their undergrad. And then you start with the bridge program, which is equivalent to the undergraduate CS classes, like all of them, in order to get minimally a minor in CS in undergrad. And so that's the bridge part. And then once you finish the bridge and you move on just to the master portion, because having the bridge completed, you're supposed to have the foundation in CS so that you can move on to the master, which is what I did. So I first finished the bridge and then I enrolled into the master. And I had one semester during my master, and after that, I also went on like to intern for MongoDB during that summer. And then after the summer internship, and I was done with Mongo, and then I finished my last semester with my master. And then at the very end, after I graduated, I continue on with Mongo after I interned for them. So now I've started with Mongo for about 6 months or so, and working as a full-time software engineer. So that bit is my story and journey to where I'm at now. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, love to answer them.
Great. Thanks so much, Jackie. It looks like Nicole has already asked a question. What do you mean by black boxes?
Yeah. So again, I'm not sure like if any of you were uh like have gone through the coding bootcamp route, because I remember like when I was referring to black boxes, it was when I was still in the bootcamp, and even to today, like black boxes appear often. But I remember in the coding bootcamp, the project that we built was largely like a front end application. And very first thing that you use is a React library for the front end component handling. And then React to me was a black box, and there's a lot of underlying components, like moving pieces that makes React work. But at the time, coding bootcamp was what, like I did the part-time one. So with that, like it was 6 months long. But then if you were to do a full-time one, maybe just like uh 12 weeks or 3 months or so or something. But the point is, like within that short time frame, you're forced to learn a lot of things, which are all valuable by itself. But at the end of the day, I just felt that like I was using a lot of these like black boxes and put them together and then create an application. And frankly, like even to this day, like you as a software engineer, this is like what you often do. Like you're putting together black boxes and make things work. But at the time, I was also very curious just to know like a little bit more each time, like, oh, like what is this doing underneath? And then try to like unravel it. And as I unravel it, then like I start to see like, oh, in order to understand some of these things that work, that underpin the overall framework, I think my foundation was insufficient. And I think that's what prompted me to go through the master route.
Great. Next question is from Jason. What do you recommend as a pathway for someone with some experience learning programming, but no coding bootcamp or undergrad degree? If you could do it again, what pathway would you choose knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I think uh, one thing that's extremely key is dedication in this path because a lot of the materials that you find in a CS course or in a bootcamp are widely available in the internet for free often if you spend the time to look for it. I think often is not like you definitely have access to all of these information, but I think the most challenging side is how can you craft a pathway to learn subject in an orderly manner? Because you start with very little background and then you learn something that does not have a lot of prereq of what you should know in order to learn that subject, and you move on and you continue. So I think that part is what is trickiest. And I think in terms of pathways, I forgot what is that. Let me see. Let's say like front end pathway. Yeah, like so if you go to the website roadmap, let me also share it here. Yeah, so I just put it into the chat. And that website in general also provides you a pretty good roadmap in terms of what are the things that you should know. And it also lay out some of the prerequisites that you might require before you move on to the next step. And that often is a very helpful. So I think the link that I sent you, yeah, I think the link I sent you is not necessarily just for front end, but then front end is one of them that you see. But the point is, I think one is you can do this for free. You need to be dedicated. At the same time, you have to learn it in a meaningful order. So if you can have both done, then I think you can definitely learn all the things necessary to become a software engineer. Then the next thing is how do you get a job? To get a job, I would say like one is definitely you have experience, and experience could come from either you build your own projects, you contribute to open source projects, and you can also freelance. Or if you can like then also like intern. I think like internship is also another good way for people without a lot of experiences but can build up experiences. So I think these ways to help you accumulate experiences at the same time just continuously learn because like learning really doesn't really stop in software engineering. There's always like new things to learn. So I think, yeah, so with all of those things combined, perhaps like that could give you a starting point in terms of how you want to plan.
Next question is from, oh, somebody said the
Oh,
link isn't working.
yeah, you can just search row. Let me see what comes. Yeah, you can just type. I'm not sure if this works.
All right, well,
Oh
some
yeah,
questions.
I think this one is working now.
Okay, great. This next question
Yeah.
is from Zin. At what point at your current position did you feel like you know what you're doing in terms of coding? Can you talk about when you started out at your current position, for the first time as a software engineer, like what struggles you faced, et cetera? Like, I guess essentially, like, what's it like when you're first starting out? What's the learning curve like, and what was that like for you?
Mm, yeah. Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah. At what point at your current position do you feel like you knew what you were doing in terms of coding? Can you talk about when you started at your current position, like, or the first time as a software engineer, like what struggles you faced, et cetera?
Yeah, there are definitely different moments of victories, if you will, that made me think that I know what I was doing. But then that when you become a software engineer in the industry, there is not just about coding. And coding, I would loosely like think like whatever language you use, like like coding, like actually like writing like code, like definitely is like a big part of it. But then very quickly you have to collaborate with someone, and then you have to be good with Git, and not just like using Git itself, but then how do you make meaningful pull requests so that people can review it easily, and then what are the messages you write, and then so that is just like the collaboration front, and then you also have soft skills to talk to people, to when to work with them. But then for a technical project, often you have to plan ahead about what you foresee as the roadblocks and what are the things that you have to encounter when you start a project. Then you might go into a phase of writing a technical specification report. And that report will have to loop in like other people, like other stakeholders, for example, product design or graphic design, like things like that. And then SEO, like depends on whatever you do. So that will evolve into a different line of work. And going back to the technical piece, and you also have to write tests, and you have to think about DevOps, which is deployment, how your application is currently deployed, and what happens if there is additional traffic, and how does it scale, like things like that. So there's like definitely a lot of layers beyond just coding. And I would even argue some of the things that I mentioned weren't even covered in a CS degree, and those are things that are expected for a first year to pick up, and continue to grow as a software engineer. So I think, yeah, I think what I definitely feel that the things that I knew mostly aligned with coding. I think coding sometimes is probably the easier part. The harder part of the coding that's still related is just how do you keep, how do you stay focused with your code base when your code base could be hundreds, thousands, millions lines of code, and there's a lot of dependencies that you have to play with, like you're changing code in this side, knowing that there's a lot of things going on, but then how do you stay focused on changing the things that only impact the scope of your work? And you will also need to look at the code that's not written by you, or maybe written by you, but like years ago and you forgot. So how do you maintain all of this and continue to develop features or fix bugs? At the same time, you have to write it in a readable way because again, you want people to review your code. They don't have to spend too much effort in understanding what you just did. Or again, like you may be the one in future reviewing your own code, and you also don't want to trip yourself in future. Like, what did I just write 2 years ago? So that's why I think like a lot of different facets that also plays into the day to day of a software engineer.
Great. Thank you. Next one is from Gary. Do you think having completed a CS degree in a boot camp would give you an advantage in today's job market compared to those who only completed one or the other?
Yeah, I think immediately, I think there's definitely an advantage, and I will not sugarcoat this just because a lot of the jobs out there often will require either a bachelor or a bootcamp, or I've seen that a internship or co-op opportunities that are dedicated to bootcamp graduates, like things like that. Like, so with those job postings, I can already tell that there's definitely an advantage if you're in one of those camps. So for those reasons, I do think so. That said, if you have neither, I think you can still break into it. I think the best way to break into it really is contribute to open source and also like freelance. And then I know that a lot of companies will uh, have third party contractors, and often like those are like the freelancing jobs like when they start. And after they have experiences, and often like when they are working for one of the contracting companies, they are also working for like suppose like say like Facebook. Facebook also have like out third party vendors that serves as their contracting companies. And then yeah, and then I know some of my friends that was one of the contractors working for Facebook and then eventually became a full-time Facebook software engineer. So I think like those paths also exist.
Next question is from Nikki at MongoDB. What was that transition like for you after your bootcamp experience? What was your interview process like?
Yeah, so the way that I got into Mongo was through internship. And for internship, I just applied. And then I went through the interview process. So I cannot speak to the full-time interview process with Mongo because I have never had that. In terms of the interview process for my internship position at the time, it was pretty standard. I think it's still like the same today. So you start with the first phone call with the HR, and the HR would go through to understand your resume, your background, and then to like ask you questions here and there, like they might be somewhat technical, and then just to make sure that like you're a human being, you can talk, and then you seem to have sufficient foundation in software engineering, you know what you're doing, and then you move on to the next round. The next round is usually a phone screen that is like a remote interview, but it's technical. So you are expected to have an algorithmic interview, one or two. I think yeah, one or two interviews, but they're both technical, meaning you will be expected to get a algorithmic question. And then after that, then that's the last round, which is I forgot if there's a term for it. But then you're expected to have like back-to-back 2 to 3 interviews. They are both technical, and then the last one will be with the hiring manager. And the hiring manager is usually someone who is very, very senior in the industry, minimally 10 plus years of working experience. And they will just also talk about, okay, what are the technical projects you have built? And then what are the technical challenges that you have had to get a sense of what your technical understanding of building a system, a complex system or software is. So, and then usually by the end of that, you will expect to hear back within 2 or 3 days from the HR if you get the offer or not. So that's usually the process. I think that process largely applies to full-time as well.
Great. Next question. Oops, gotta scroll a little bit. Let's see here. Okay, this is from Dajin. There's a lot of saturation, in my opinion, in this field, and even getting an internship is very competitive. How was your experience finding employment after graduating? I stopped searching after a year and decided to pursue a CS degree even after I went through a boot camp.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's definitely competitive, and it often like it's not so much about this is like the slightly unsettling fact that I found because often it largely relates to the economy and the industry cycle. And we had times where it was pretty easy to get interviews as well as getting offers. And then now like you also see people with years of experiences and cannot make it. Like so I think sometimes like definitely don't blame it on yourself. Like there's like things that you could do to improve your chances, but often like sometimes like things might be out of your hand and just don't feel discouraged because of that. But that said, I do think that so my time when I was applying, it was 2019 or 2020. Yeah, I think just like right before all of the layoffs. And I think 2021 was the craziest time when all of the companies was trying to overhire. And that time was easier. But then like starting from 2022, and then we had all the layoffs, and then that became very difficult. And I think the market has slightly returned to better, but it's still relatively tough compared to the time we had before. I would say the only thing that we could really do is just to continue to become more competitive as a candidate, continue to learn different technologies, to build projects, to contribute to open source, to participate in hackathon, and continue to build your network within the industry. I think regardless of the economy or the industry cycle, again, these are things that are not within our control. And these are like bettering ourselves is always the best. And then eventually the market will return to a bit more normal, and then we'll be in a better position to leverage and exploit these opportunities.
Next question is from IUL. What sites do you recommend for freelancing for fresh graduates? If you have any thoughts on this, I'm not sure if you freelanced.
Yeah, because I have not, so unfortunately I don't know very well. I think for open source contributions, I think there's like different sites you could look it up. Like for open source contributions, you could first just start with your interest and your technology that you're familiar with. Like for example, like do you want a Python project or JavaScript project, or like, and then within the language, like what type of applications or libraries do you want to contribute, and then start from there. Like there's a lot of lists you can easily Google, and then I think there's also a GitHub repo that curates a list of. I forgot. I think like for open source projects, there's a tag that people usually put as beginner friendly or something, and then to allow people to know like this open source project is beginner friendly, so then you can start with those. But going back to freelancing, I think there are different sites that can match you with people looking for people to work, and then I think those could be a good way. But I also heard that those sites are very competitive. Like you found yourself competing with some engineers overseas, like, and then they're really hungry for work, and then so that's why I don't know too well about the freelancing route. In my case, I do have a friend that has been in the consulting business, and then so like you can tap into people to like things like connections like this. Like if you know someone in your circle that has started a consulting company, and you can often easily freelance for these companies. And I think you can also just look up like consulting company. I actually don't know what's the right thing to search for, but I do know there are a lot of these consulting companies, and then the way that they work is like a contracting model. So then you can start freelancing for these companies, and then build up experience, and then if you have more existing clients, then you can start to expand and also freelance for these companies.
Great, thank you. Jeremy asks, what kind of projects were you working on during your internship?
Yeah, so the internship and my current position, they're both for the same team. So MongoDB has different web teams because we want to serve our customer, which often are software engineers like you. So we want to help them as much as we can. One is how do we onboard software engineers as quick as possible in adopting MongoDB and leverage it for your project. So that's why we have different websites that's part of the MongoDB real estate. We try to to tell you like, okay, you have a specific tech stack. Like you have a tech stack of using Python, using so and so drivers, and then we'll give you code examples or articles that fit with that example. So things like that, and we also have like documentation. So all of these websites essentially are serving the developer communities so that you understand MongoDB faster and better. So I work for one of those web teams, and we build full stack web applications that allow our users to understand how to use MongoDB faster. It's similar to documentation.
Next question, also from Jeremy. How would you go about networking as an intern to land a full-time position?
Yeah, networking. So this is what I have been doing and what I like to do, but it's not, it does not give you high return in the shortest period of time. So for that, let's say I have two approaches. One is the short-term approach, and the other one is the long-term approach. So the short-term approach is, yeah, just try to reach out to people on LinkedIn, as many as you can, and treat it as a number game. Have a relatively mature and sophisticated template and just use it across, and just try to get people to talk to you. And hopefully through that conversation, you can land a referral. So that, as you can see, is like you might have very low response rate, but then like you're just trying to play with the numbers and get that as high as you can, just reach out to as many as you can. I think like that is like not that special. And I'm sure a lot of you are already trying with this strategy. And if you feel that like people are not responding to you, also just make sure you follow up once or twice, because I think it's very easy for one to reach out to someone, but then you pretty much get to like 10 or 20% of the remaining that will likely follow up. Sometimes following up will leave a more special impression onto the individual that they feel bad to keep you hanging and might respond. So you might get a better response rate because of that. So I definitely encourage you to follow up. But this is still part of the short-term strategy that I think of. The long-term strategy is, again, like this is long-term, so you will spend more time on this. I like to identify individuals, again, like maybe through one of the code LinkedIn or code email messages that you have had. You had this conversation with this individual. But from that conversation, like he or she is willing to talk to you, and then you realize like, wow, like this individual actually is willing to help, because even someone agrees to talk to you, they will do the very bare minimum. Like, what's your question? The answer is A. You have the next one, and then like the answer is B. That's it. Like it's very dry and transactional. But often you will run into people that are willing to help. Like you ask them questions and they give you a lot more than you expected. With those people, just try to say the phrase like, oh, like I really appreciate your time, and I feel like you're being a mentor to me. I wonder if you'd be okay if we keep in touch on a weekly or biweekly or monthly basis. And one thing that I would like to do with you is potentially like if you're okay, we can do a monthly or biweekly, something regular technical interview sessions with that individual. Because the reason why I like to do this is one, you definitely want to identify mentors, and mentorships are extremely valuable. If you can identify mentors ASAP, like that will definitely be better. And then the second thing is to have someone prep the technical interviews with you. So that's also super key. And then the third thing is that you need something as an anchor to maintain or build this relationship. It's very easy for you to talk to someone, have one conversation, but if you were in their shoes, like how much do you think you would help that person just after one conversation? That by itself is very transactional and it's not maintainable. That's why having a technical interview sessions regularly, like you are talking with this person from time to time, and that gives you the opportunity for both of you to build this relationship. And the person that agrees to this also feels that like, oh wow, like I'm really helping you out. Like I want to help you more now because I agreed to doing this. Then like he or she will naturally to also like help you out more in the process in the future. Will let you know like, oh, when should you apply? What should you do and things like that. And this all comes down to the very end, like to referral. It's easy to get a simple referral from someone. Like if they agree, like, oh, can you just put me into your system to refer me to this job? And they say yes, sure. But if you, especially for people that are slightly more senior, and if you have been doing these sessions with them for a very long time, then you can also expect that you will get a better and stronger referral from this person. And they will do more work to push you through the process, to connect you with the right person. And I think that is very valuable. So that's why, for that reason, I definitely think this is a more time consuming approach. And that's why I think long term approach, but you have a mentor at the end, and then you also get a stronger referral. So don't think of this as like getting a job today and then like that's it. Even like you get a job today and in a year or so or 2 years, you will switch jobs again. And that's why like the relationships like these are extremely crucial for you to continue to navigate this industry and grow.
Next question is from Nicole. What skills from your boot camp and what skills from your CS degree were useful for you day to day as a software engineer? Were there still gaps in your knowledge when you started working in the industry? And if so, could you give an example of any knowledge gaps that were not covered in your boot camp or CS program?
100%. So bootcamp, and again, the one that I took is a full stack web development bootcamp. I think bootcamps like these really focus on web development. And within web development, the focus has more been on the front end. So if the software engineering role that you want to take is either in the full stack or front end capacity, you definitely learn more about front end web development because of the bootcamp. The reason why I brought this up is the CS route, the degree route, often focus less on actually building an application or building the software that works. Surprisingly, yeah, like CS, the degree route often is like more theoretical and less about actually building applications. Although there are classes like that, but the focus is definitely not on like building the applications. So I think for that end, to that end, coding bootcamp helps you with this. And and then, so the CS route, degree route, will lack more on the project building experiences or the front end web development experiences. Lastly, I do think both routes lack commonly in one thing, which is the DevOps experience. I'm not sure if some of you or if most of you are familiar with the concept of DevOps. So when you have an application, and I think like this is also true, like if you went through the bootcamp route, by the end you have a capstone, and some of you might not even deploy it, meaning like you only run it locally. You cannot access your website in the internet. Or if you do like deploy it, then you might deploy with some of the more friendly like low code platforms like what's that called? I forgot. I think there are like some of those websites that just like does pretty much like all the heavy lifting for you, and you just need to push a code, press a button, and then like push your code. But think about your software once deployed, then how do you manage like when it scales, when if there's like more traffic, and if your application grows in complexity, there are different components, how they communicate with each other. So a lot of these things fall into the bucket of DevOps. And when you become a software engineer in the industry, your application has to be within the industry standard. You have to think, you have to take all of these things into considerations, and DevOps pretty much hit you right away. But bootcamp and CS degree, in my opinion, don't really talk about this subject as thoroughly. So I think that's also one of the common, relatively steep learning curves when you start at your job is often just like the DevOps. Yeah, Heroku. Yeah, Heroku is the one that I was thinking in mind. Yeah. Yeah, but like if you use AWS, that's great. Like AWS, often a lot of things that you use within AWS fall under, not necessarily, but then like a lot of things that you do in AWS are exactly like the skill sets or knowledge that you are expecting to demonstrate within DevOps. And so, in the ideal world, if you have time, I will also encourage you to take the AWS Solutions Architect Associate Certificate. That also is very helpful because nowadays a lot of the software you build either within the industry or for your own personal project, you often have to leverage cloud as a solution. And AWS itself is like the de facto cloud providers right now. And then a lot of the things that you use with AWS, they require you to think in DevOps sense, sometimes like often and beyond. But then like, yeah, I think if you are familiar with AWS and you also incorporate AWS into your software, I think that is definitely a good direction to have.
Okay, great. And there was sort of a sub question. Where was it? Oh, wait, no, that was answered. Never mind. All right. So moving on from Zin, did you start coding on day one at your internship and full-time position, or did you get trained again, or did do more learning before you officially started coding? Like pretty much were you thrown into coding on the first day or no?
Maybe not the first day. I think with mid to big size companies, the onboarding experience to range from 1 week all the way to surprisingly 6 months. And maybe like it depends on the complexity of your technology, your software, your team. A lot of times you just have to have the right environment configured, and sometimes depends on the company. Like if you have a lot of security clearance, like just to get access to certain things could take a while. But for my experience, I think it has been about like half a week to a week before I meaningfully contribute to the code base. So that's like relatively quick, given what I just told you. And I think our project is relatively small in scale compared to like the more industry graded projects that I was thinking in mind when I was telling you this. So I think that's why the onboarding experience or onboarding time was shorter than usual. But yeah, I think one is have the environment configured, have all the access you need, have all the secret keys that you need to just run your team's software, run your team's application, so that you can develop on it. And then next step is to understand the code base. And whatever team that you work for, they likely have a project management system that you have to be familiar with. The industry standard is often Jira, but then they might use something else. But you just need to know like, okay, this is the project management tool that our team uses. And then from there, you know what are the things that people are working on. Like with Jira, there are tickets. So what are the tickets for Epic? It's like a bigger group of tickets. What are the tickets or Epic like projects people are working on? And then like maybe like why are they working on it? What are they trying to solve? What are the problems that we have? And what are the future features that you try to implement? And then you understand all of those. And then the code base. Like what on a high level, what are the code base? What is your code base? And what are some components? For a good company, not good company, for like a good team, you may have all of these resources well documented. People might have created diagrams to visualize the moving components within your software system. And if there isn't, then I highly encourage, I did this. So I highly encourage you, if your team does not have existing or outdated diagrams of your overall system, then you can take the initiative to write or create your own diagram for your own team. because one, your team does need that. Your team wants to, from time to time, understand what are all the moving pieces. And when they have new members coming along, then this is also a very good resource for them to quickly onboard. But then you can use this as an opportunity to also understand the code base and document it. So at the end, it helps you to understand the code base. It also helps your team to have a more documented code base.
Great. Next one. How would you go about networking as an intern to land a full-time position?
I don't. Let me see. Did I turn it off? Can someone say something? I can't hear anything anymore.
Oh, hey, Jackie, can you hear this?
Yeah, I see you. Okay, let me see. There might be something wrong on my end. Hello?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry, my audio is not setting it right. But yeah, I can hear you guys now.
All right, no problem. So that last question I asked was from Jeremy. How would you go about networking as an intern to land a full-time position?
I think it's the same. The networking process that I have when I was applying for internships and applying for full-time is still the same. So I don't think I did anything different except because I was already interning with Mongo. So it makes sense for me to have more relationships within the company, and I can leverage that to start a wider or stronger net, if you will. But besides that, I don't think I did anything different than what I've mentioned to you. I think, yeah, the process that I have is still pretty consistent. Just identify mentors, and if you just want to get as many referrals as possible, just cold email, cold message people.
Okay, great. Next question is from Nicole. What's a good resource to get more DevOps and deployment knowledge?
In terms of learning, my favorite two sites are YouTube and Udemy. And so I think you can pretty much learn anything you need there. And yeah, I think you can just easily search for DevOps on both platforms, but also Medium too. I also like Medium a lot. Yeah, and then among the three, just see like whatever comes up like DevOps for beginners, things like that. I think that will give you a good intro. That said, also maintain the balance because DevOps is by itself its own domain, and you can get extremely deep within DevOps. And there's also a role called DevOps engineers. If that's the path that you want to take, then sure, like continue to dig deeper. But if you just want to become a software engineer, then you just have to find the balance, like what are the DevOps things I need to know for software engineering. But again, I think like one is like have a basic understanding of all of the key concepts in DevOps, like on a high level, that such that you can talk about it. Because I believe a lot of you's focus currently is trying to get a job. And so a lot of things that I mentioned is always like in the ideal world. If you have time, what should you learn? And I definitely think you should learn DevOps. But again, like DevOps is such a big realm, so you could end up spending a lot of time in DevOps and learning DevOps before you get a full-time position might not give you the best return in terms of just maximizing your chance to get an offer. That's why minimally, because for all of the technical interviews, toward the end, likely like they will have like some technical discussions on a very high level. So you should have like you can talk about like not I wouldn't say BS, but like minimally you should have like the key concepts of like for example like databases, like deployments, like these concepts on a high level you can talk about it. If someone were to ask you like some questions, you can immediately respond something. I think that that's like the goal that I want you to have if you're currently in a stage of landing your next position.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next one from Nikki. How do you balance working versus life outside of work?
I think fortunately my work hasn't been too tough, so that's why it's easier to maintain the balance. And then for me, I I like to learn a lot of new technologies and framework. So that's why like after work or before work, I often like just like learn different subjects. And that is generally helpful. So to me, like I also don't see learning as a tedious or mind consuming task. I think that like, oh, like by knowing all of these things, I can now have a bigger toolbox to build a cooler app. So that's why I just like to continue to reinvest into this cycle and just continue to learn. So yeah, and I encourage you to do this because within software engineering, the learning process never ends. And so yeah, and I forgot what's the original question to this, but yeah.
Balancing work life versus
Oh,
not.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, again, I don't think work has been too difficult. So yeah, to that, I don't have a big problem in balancing between work and life.
Okay, great. Let's see here. Time for a few more questions. This is from AOL. How did you prepare for your technical interviews for your internship? What resources did you use?
So technical interviews, I would loosely think in two buckets, maybe even three. The first bucket is the algorithmic questions. The first keyword that you should have in mind is lead code. So yeah, just I wouldn't say grind lead code, but then yeah, I think lead code is definitely the good way. And then with lead code, then there's the blind 75 list. I'm not sure if you heard of it. Is there was one guy in the lead code forum community that curated this list of 75 questions that is supposedly the bare minimum for you to finish. But I think with lead code, the biggest challenge is what is the order of the questions? Like which one should you start and then what's the next one? And I think lead code now has different features. I think explore or something like for interview prep, they have different modules that to set you up for success. Like these are the list of questions that you should be tackling one at a time, or even within like what duration, what like if you want to finish the whole thing within like 3 months, then this is the suggestions and whatnot. So yeah, with lead code is really like dedication, patience, and then just do it in a more like don't pick questions randomly. Definitely try to finish a pattern. Like within lead code, there's a lot of patterns, and then try to master each pattern before you move on to the next one. And then after a few patterns, then like you actually like have gone pretty far. But I think lead code, the hardest part is to start. Often, like I think my experience is there's easy, medium, and hard problems in lead code, and getting a breadth of the easy questions, I think that is the hardest step. But once you get a breadth of the easy questions, from easy to medium, that leap, in my opinion, is much smaller than the leap of like having nothing to start and then develop a breadth in easy. So as long as you can get over that, I think you are definitely in the right direction already. So that's why like, I highly encourage you to don't be afraid of lead code and just get used to it. And then in terms of YouTube channels, my favorite is definitely Neat Code with an N. Yeah, I think Lead Code and Neat Code combined definitely can get you pretty far with technical interviews. The other part of technical interviews that I think is also relevant is either like the object-oriented design or system design. I think system design are often created for people that are more senior, but nowadays we also start to see that some design questions will be asked for junior roles. So you should also have a sense of what they are. And this goes back to the previous point that I made is some of the technical concepts that is involved when you build a software on a high level, you should be able to talk about them because they might come up in the system design interviews. But I think the extent of system design is relatively less for new grad. And then the middle piece is the object-oriented design. If some of you have coded in an object-oriented language, for example, like JavaScript, Python, like you often would see people writing in the object-oriented manner. And there are interview questions designed to test you on that. So that can also be another realm of interview questions that you might encounter.
Great. And I think we have time for one more question. We've got just one more. Do you recommend an MS in computer science for someone who's taken a boot camp and has about 2 years of experience in the industry as a software engineer?
So I just put in a website for you guys, and that is another bootcamp that I know. And this bootcamp is designed for bootcamp graduates. And I think I have another friend that completed a bootcamp and is currently in this one, and we have talked about this quite a while. And I do like this bootcamp a lot, and it's pretty much like it markets itself as the equivalent to an MS program. And I do think it seems like it has a really good reputation, and the curriculum that I read is a good map to a lot of things I learned from the CS degree. So if you don't want to consider a CS degree necessarily, or an MS degree necessarily, I think this bootcamp could also potentially satisfy what you're looking for. But you don't necessarily need a degree. Like all of the information, all the knowledge is always out there. So that I think the bootcamp that I share with you, Bradfield also created this website. Let me see. Yeah. teachyourselfcs.com. I think this website was created by Bradfield, which is the bootcamp that I share with you. They listed out all of the classes that people commonly learn in a CS degree. They also shared the free open university lecture recordings as well as the textbook that they use for these classes. So this is a list of what you might expect from a CS degree. And all of these things are free, like in a way, like textbook, if you somehow find a way, I don't know. But like a lot of these things, a lot of these resources can be freely available. So if you don't want to pay for anything and you really just want the knowledge, you can get them. And this is also the roadmap that I would suggest in terms of a CS track. Like I think this website is pretty neat in that sense.
All right, great. Well, perfect timing. I think that's it for our questions, and we've just got 3 minutes left. So that's as good a place as any to wrap. Jacky, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for sharing all of your experience and knowledge, and to all of those participating in the conversation. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your time. And thank yourselves for putting this energy and time back into your own job search and career development. This talk will be posted on the Onramp dashboard within the next few days, so you can see it in your dashboard as long as you have an Onramp account. If not, you can easily make one. And I think that's it. Jacky, thank you so much. I'm going to send you a follow-up email to thank you again. And I hope everybody has a great rest of their day.
Yeah, same here. Thank you for having me. Good luck, y'all.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.